A respected judge is about to be burned alive. His crime? Trying to save innocent people. In front of a silent crowd, as the executioner lights the kindling, he speaks his final words. God will judge between you and me. He has no idea that 67 years from now, those words will help end witch hunting across Europe. But today, in September 1589, in the German city of Trier, all he knows is this. If they can burn him, they can burn anyone. Welcome to Ash and Crown History. I'm your guide through the darkest corners of the past, where we don't just tell you what happened, we make you feel what it was like to live it. Today's story is about the deadliest witch hunt in European history. In just 12 years, one city will execute 368 people for witchcraft. Entire families will be wiped out. Whole villages will be decimated. The city's population will drop by 30%. But this isn't just another witch hunt story, because the person who finally stopped it had to do it from beyond the grave. And before this is over, you're going to meet a man who heard the confessions of hundreds of condemned witches and realized not a single one was guilty. This is Trier, Germany. The year is 1581, and you're about to witness how fear becomes policy, how power becomes corruption, and how one man's courage, even in death, can change the world. Let's go back. Picture this. It's 1580. You're walking through the streets of Trier on a warm summer evening. The Porta Nigra, a massive Roman gate built over 1,300 years ago, casts long shadows across the cobblestones. This is the oldest city in Germany, and you can feel the weight of history in every stone. Children play in the Hauptmarkt, the main square. Merchants are closing their stalls. The smell of fresh bread drifts from the bakeries. The cathedral bells ring for evening prayers. This is a city of about 10,000 people. Prosperous, peaceful, proud. Trier isn't just any city. It's the seat of one of the most powerful men in the Holy Roman Empire. The Archbishop of Trier isn't merely a religious leader. He's one of 7 prince-electors, the men who choose the emperor himself. He controls vast territories, collects taxes from dozens of towns, commands armies. In Trier, the archbishop is king in everything but name. But by 1580, cracks are showing in the foundation. The Protestant Reformation has torn Germany apart. Cities that once paid tribute to Catholic Trier have converted to Lutheranism and stopped sending money. The economy is struggling. 3 bad harvests in a row have left people hungry. Bread prices are rising. Taxes are increasing. People are scared, angry, looking for answers, looking for someone to blame. And in 1581, they get a new archbishop who has a very simple explanation for all of Trier's problems. Witches. His name is Johann von Schönenberg. He's 43 years old when he takes office. Educated, intelligent, a true believer in the Catholic faith, and absolutely, genuinely, completely convinced that Satan has infiltrated Trier. Schönenberg believes that witches are gathering in the forests at night, making pacts with demons, causing crop failures, spreading disease, corrupting the faithful. He believes this the way you believe the sun will rise tomorrow, with utter certainty. And he's brought an advisor with him, a man who will help him turn belief into action. His name is Peter Binsfeld. Binsfeld is one of the leading experts on demonology in Europe. He's written books about how to identify witches, how to interrogate them, how demons operate. He's developed a whole classification system of demons. Each of the 7 deadly sins has its own corresponding demon. Lucifer for pride, Mammon for greed, Asmodeus for lust. In Binsfeld's worldview, demons are everywhere, and witches are their human servants. Together, Schönenberg and Binsfeld are about to turn Trier into hell on earth. But here's what makes this witch hunt different from all the others. They don't start with the usual suspects. Most witch hunts begin with the vulnerable, the old woman who lives alone, the beggar, the social outcast. Easy targets, people no one will defend. Not in Trier. In Trier, they're going to start by sending a message. A message so terrifying that it will paralyze the entire city. They're going to arrest one of the most powerful men in Trier, and they're going to make him burn. Meet Dietrich Flade. In 1581, he's 52 years old. The Deputy Governor of Trier, the second highest secular authority in the city. Imagine him, gray-haired, distinguished, wearing the robes of his office. A man who's served the archbishopric faithfully for over 20 years. He's respected, educated at prestigious universities, wealthy enough to own property throughout the region. He's married, has children, attends Mass regularly. By every measure, Dietrich Flade is a pillar of the community. He's also about to become the most famous victim of the Trier witch trials. But not yet. First, we need to talk about how the trials began. It's spring of 1582. The first accusations start trickling in. A woman claims her neighbor gave her the evil eye, and the next day her cow died. The neighbor is arrested. A beggar is accused of cursing a merchant who refused to give him alms. The merchant's child fell ill 2 days later. The beggar is arrested. These early cases follow a familiar pattern. The accused are brought to the city dungeons. They're interrogated. At first, they deny everything. Of course they do. So the interrogation becomes enhanced. The city's torturer, yes, that was an actual job title, had an arsenal of tools designed for one purpose: making people talk. The thumbscrews were simple. Metal vices that crushed your thumbs until the bones splintered. Most people confessed before both thumbs were broken. The strappado was more elaborate. Your hands were tied behind your back. You were hoisted up by a rope until you were hanging by your arms. Your shoulders dislocated with a wet pop. Then they'd drop you suddenly and catch you. The jerk would tear muscles, snap tendons. People confessed. But here's the thing about torture. It doesn't reveal truth. It reveals what the torturer wants to hear. And what Trier's interrogators wanted to hear was very specific. I am a witch. I made a pact with the devil. And there are others. Especially that last part. Because once you confessed, the torture didn't stop. Now they needed names. Who else was at the witch's Sabbath with you? Who else made a pact with the devil? And here's where the witch hunt becomes a machine that feeds itself. If you refused to give names, the torture continued. If you gave names of people who were already dead or who'd left the city, they knew you were holding back. The torture continued. The only way to make it stop was to give them living names, preferably wealthy names. See, there was a financial incentive built into the system. When someone was convicted of witchcraft, their property was seized by the archbishopric. Their house, their business, their savings, everything. Every execution made Archbishop Schönenberg richer. So by mid-1582, a pattern emerges. Poor people are arrested, tortured. They confess and name slightly wealthier people. Those people are arrested, tortured. They confess and name even wealthier people. The accusations are climbing the social ladder like a vine growing toward the sun. And Dietrich Flade is watching this happen. As deputy governor, he has a legal obligation to oversee the trials, to ensure they're conducted properly. And what he sees horrifies him. He sees people tortured until they confess to impossible things, flying through the air, having sex with demons, eating babies. He sees the same names appearing in confession after confession, because the tortured have learned which names the interrogators want to hear. He sees families destroyed. A mother confesses and names her daughter. The daughter confesses and names her husband. The husband confesses and names his brother. Entire bloodlines being erased. And in early 1582, Flade does something incredibly brave. He writes a letter to Archbishop Schönenberg. In it, he argues that the trials are unjust, that confessions obtained through torture are unreliable, that innocent people are dying. He proposes reforms, limits on torture, independent verification of accusations, the right to legal defense, basic due process. He seals the letter, sends it to the Archbishop's palace, and waits. The response comes on June 15, 1582. But it's not a letter. It's armed guards at Flade's door. Dietrich Flade is arrested and charged with witchcraft. Let that sink in. The deputy governor of Trier, a man who served the church faithfully for decades, arrested because he questioned the witch trials. The message to the rest of Trier is crystal clear. Speak up and you're next. And it works. After Flade's arrest, opposition to the trials evaporates. No one dares question them. No one dares defend the accused. Because if powerful Dietrich Flade can be arrested, anyone can be. The trials explode. By the end of 1582, 50 people have been executed. By the end of 1583, the number is over 100. Trier builds permanent execution sites because they're burning people so frequently that setting up temporary stakes is inefficient. Let me take you to one of these executions. It's a cold morning in November 1583. You're standing in a crowd of maybe 300 people in a field just outside the city walls. For wooden stakes have been driven into the ground. At the base of each, kindling and logs are stacked head-high. For people are led out in chains. 3 women and 1 man. The youngest is maybe 16. The oldest is in her 60s. They're given one last chance to confess publicly, to name any accomplices they haven't yet revealed. 2 of them speak. Their voices are barely audible. They name names. People in the crowd, people watching them, and you see those people go pale with terror, because they know what comes next. After the execution, the guards will be looking for them. The executioner does his work quickly. Each prisoner is tied to their stake. Straw is packed around their legs. Then the torches are lit. The executions in Trier weren't the slow burnings you might imagine. They couldn't afford to be. They were burning people too frequently. The fires were hot and fast. Most victims died of smoke inhalation within minutes. Most, not all. The crowd watches in silence. Not because they're sad. Not because they're protesting. because they're terrified. Any one of them could be next. And while this is happening, Dietrich Flade sits in a cell beneath the Archbishop's palace. He's been imprisoned for over a year now. They haven't tortured him yet. He's too prominent. Schönenberg is building a case carefully, methodically. They're waiting for someone to name him. And in 1586, someone finally does. Her name is Anna Spitz. She's a merchant's wife, accused of witchcraft after a business dispute. She's been on the strappado for 3 days. Her shoulders are dislocated. Her wrists are shattered. She's begged for death. The interrogators ask her, "Who leads the witches' Sabbath?" Through cracked lips, she whispers a name. Dietrich Flade. The interrogators lean forward. "Say it again." Dietrich Flade is the king of the witches. It's the confession Schönenberg has been waiting for. 3 more witches are interrogated. All of them, under torture, confirm it. Dietrich Flade leads the witches' Sabbath. Never mind that he's been in prison for 4 years. Never mind that it's impossible. They have confessions now. Multiple confessions. In the legal system of 1586, that's enough. Meanwhile, something else is happening in Trier. The city is dying. By 1587, the death toll from the witch trials has passed 200. But it's not just the executions. People are fleeing. Anyone with wealth or means is getting out of Trier as fast as they can. Because wealth makes you a target. The poor can't afford to leave. So they stay and live in terror. Entire neighborhoods are empty. Houses stand abandoned. Their wealthy owners executed or fled. Businesses are closing. There's no one left to run them. The baker was burned. The blacksmith fled to France. The weaver was arrested last week. Fields are going unplowed because the farmers have been executed. Tax revenue is collapsing. There's no one left to tax. The city that Schönenberg swore to protect is being destroyed by his protection. But he doesn't see it that way. In his mind, he's purging evil, saving Trier from Satan. The fact that Trier is falling apart? That's just proof of how deeply the witches had infiltrated. He needs to push harder. And in 1589, he's ready to stage his masterstroke. The execution of Dietrich Flade. It's September 18, 1589. Flade has been in prison for 7 years. 7 years of isolation, of watching guards take other prisoners away and hearing their screams from the torture chambers. They've finally tortured him too. Not as severely as the others. He's too prominent for that to be done carelessly. But his hands are broken. His legs are damaged. He can barely walk. He's been convicted by a church court, found guilty of being the leader of Trier's witches. The sentence is death by burning. He's led through the streets of Trier in chains. The crowd that watches is silent. No one cheers. No one jeers. They just watch, pale and terrified, as the deputy governor, their deputy governor, is led to his death. At the execution site, Flade is tied to the stake. The executioner asks if he has any last words. Flade looks out at the crowd, at Archbishop Schönenberg watching from a covered platform. And he speaks clearly, his voice carrying across the silent field. "I die innocent of these charges. I am no witch. I made no pact with the devil. And God will judge between you and me." Then he looks directly at Schönenberg. "The truth will come out. Perhaps not today. Perhaps not in my lifetime. But the truth will come out. The executioner lights the fire. Dietrich Flade burns. The crowd disperses in silence. And Schönenberg goes back to the palace, convinced he's just eliminated the head of Trier's witch conspiracy. He has no idea he's just created a martyr. After Flade's execution, you'd think the trials would slow down. The opposite happens. If Flade, powerful, respected Flade, was a witch, then the conspiracy goes even deeper than anyone thought. In 1590 alone, over 100 people are burned. The village of Pfalzel, just outside Trier, loses 40% of its population. In Krov, a wine-growing town of about 400 people, 80 are executed in a single year. Think about that ratio. 1 in 5 people burned at the stake. Entire families are wiped out. A father is accused. He names his wife. She names their children. The children name their cousins. Bloodlines that had existed for generations, erased in weeks. The city's economy has collapsed completely. The streets that aren't empty are full of beggars. People whose breadwinners were executed, left with nothing. The tax base is gone. The very property seizures that were supposed to enrich the archbishopric can't keep up with the cost of running the trials. Because witch trials are expensive. You need torturers, executioners, guards, wood for the fires, facilities to hold the accused. Schönenberg's archbishopric is going bankrupt running the machine he created. But he won't stop. Can't stop. Because stopping would mean admitting it was all a mistake. And then something happens that will eventually change everything. A young Jesuit priest arrives in Trier. His name is Friedrich Spee. He's 30 years old. Brilliant, educated, a rising star in the Jesuit order. His job? To serve as confessor to the condemned. To hear their final confessions before they're executed. To give them last rites. To prepare their souls for death. It's a holy duty. An honor. Spee arrives in Trier in 1591, ready to serve. And what he witnesses will break him. Imagine being Friedrich Spee. You're a true believer. You've dedicated your life to the church, to fighting heresy, to saving souls. You believe in witches, in demons, in the devil's power. You arrive in Trier expecting to encounter evil, to hear the confessions of Satan's servants. Instead, you meet a terrified woman who whispers to you, "Father, I'm innocent. I confessed because they broke my hands. Please, you must believe me." The next day, another confession. "Father, I named my daughter because they said they'd burn me slowly if I didn't. But she's innocent. We're both innocent." And another, "Father, I don't even know what a witch is. I'm a baker's wife. I make bread. Please tell the archbishop. Please." Day after day, week after week, confession after confession, all claiming innocence, all begging for help, and Spee can't help them, because if he speaks up, he knows what will happen. He'll be next. So he does the only thing he can do. He listens. He documents. He writes it all down in secret. By his own later account, Spee served as confessor to over 200 condemned witches in Trier and other cities. And in his private notes, he writes something that will eventually echo through history. "I have accompanied countless souls to their deaths. I have heard their final confessions. I have looked into their eyes as the flames were lit. And I swear before God, I have never met a single one who was truly guilty. But he can't publish this. Not yet. Not while Schönenberg lives. So he waits, and documents, and watches people burn, and prays that someday, somehow, someone will listen, that someone turns out to be the Holy Roman Emperor. By 1592, reports about Trier have reached the Imperial court in Prague. Emperor Rudolf II is hearing disturbing accounts. Entire towns depopulated. Trier's economy in ruins. Prominent officials executed on dubious charges. His advisors are concerned. Not necessarily because they don't believe in witches, most of them do, but because Trier is becoming a political liability. It's making the empire look unstable, making the Catholic Church look tyrannical, and that's giving ammunition to the Protestants. So Rudolf does something clever. He doesn't ban the trials. That would be too direct, too confrontational. Instead, he issues an imperial decree requiring all witch trial convictions in Trier to be reviewed by an independent imperial court before execution. Every single case has to be sent to Prague for review, and the imperial judges are skeptical, very skeptical. Cases that would have resulted in immediate execution in Trier are sent back with demands for more evidence. Confessions obtained through torture are deemed unreliable. The cases pile up. The backlog grows. And slowly, inexorably, the machine grinds to a halt. Not because Schönenberg had a change of heart, but because the emperor tied the machine up in bureaucracy. By 1593, the Trier witch trials have essentially ended. Not with a bang. With paperwork. The final toll, 368 confirmed executions. But historians believe the real number is much higher. Maybe 500. Maybe more. Some villages kept their own records that were lost. Some executions were never officially documented. We'll never know the true number. But we know this. Trier's population in 1580 was around 10,000. By 1594, it was around 7,000. 30% of the city gone. Some executed. Some fled. Some died of starvation or disease in the chaos. The city that was once the seat of one of the most powerful archbishops in Christendom was now a shell. Empty streets. Shuttered businesses, overgrown fields. It would take Trier over a century to recover its population. Some villages never recovered at all. And Schönenberg? He died in 1599, 10 years after burning Dietrich Flade. He never expressed regret, never acknowledged that innocent people had died. He went to his grave convinced he'd saved Trier from Satan. But the story doesn't end there. Because remember Flade's last words? The truth will come out. He was right. In 1631, 42 years after Flade's execution, Friedrich Spee finally published his book, Cautio Criminalis, a warning on criminal justice. Published anonymously because Spee knew it would end his career. In it, he laid out everything he'd witnessed in Trier. The torture, the false confessions, the innocence of the condemned. He wrote, "Put the most pious judge in the place of the accused. Subject him to the same torture, and he too will confess to being a witch." The book was explosive. It was read by judges, by theologians, by princes across Europe. And it planted a seed of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, the witch trials were wrong. Then in 1656, 67 years after Dietrich Flade was burned at the stake, the Holy Roman Emperor issued a formal decree. Flade was officially exonerated. The emperor declared that Flade had been wrongly convicted, that his trial was unjust, that his reputation should be restored. It didn't bring him back. It didn't bring back the 368 others who burned. But it was an official admission. The trials were wrong. And Flade's case became a landmark. Legal scholars studied it. They cited it in arguments against witch trials. The wrongful execution of Dietrich Flade became one of the most famous cases in European legal history, and it helped slowly, gradually, turn the tide against witch hunting. By 1700, witch trials had largely ended across Europe. Not everywhere, not all at once, but the madness was over. And Flade, who died trying to stop it, became the symbol of why it had to end. From beyond the grave, he won. So what do we learn from Trier? First, fear is the most powerful tool of control. Schönenberg used fear of witchcraft to silence dissent, consolidate power, and enrich himself. When leaders tell you to be afraid, always ask, who benefits from my fear? Second, torture doesn't reveal truth. Every person on the rack will eventually tell you whatever you want to hear. This isn't philosophy. It's neuroscience. Pain breaks the mind's ability to distinguish truth from fiction. Third, when questioning authority becomes heresy, tyranny has won. Flade was executed for asking for due process, for demanding evidence. The moment you can't question the system has become corrupt. Fourth, courage echoes through time. Flade spoke truth knowing it would cost him everything. Spee documented horrors knowing he could be next. The emperor's advisors pushed back knowing it would anger powerful bishops. Resistance is always possible, even when it seems hopeless. If you visit Trier today, it's a beautiful city. The Porta Nigra still stands, as imposing as ever. The cathedral is stunning. The wine is excellent. Tourists walk the streets, taking photos, enjoying the history. But if you know where to look, you can find the memorial. In the Hauptmarkt, the main square, there's a small plaque set into the ground. It lists the victims of the witch trials. 368 names. Though many are just listed as unknown woman or unknown man. Their identities lost to time. And at the top of the list, Dietrich Flade. Executed 1,589. Exonerated 1,656. The man who questioned the trials. The man who died for it. The man who, from beyond the grave, helped end them. Here at Ash and Crown History, we don't just tell you dates and facts. We take you there. We make you feel it. Because history isn't about memorizing when things happened. It's about understanding why they matter. The Trier witch trials matter because they show us what happens when fear replaces reason. When power corrupts absolutely. When good people stay silent. And when courage, even in death, can change the world. If the story moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, then subscribe to Ash and Crown History. We're building a community of people who believe history should be more than boring lectures. It should be gripping, emotional, unforgettable. Drop a comment and tell me, what historical event should we cover next? Another trial? A revolution? The fall of an empire? Your choice shapes what we cover. And here's something to think about as you go. The Trier trials happened because people believed accusations without evidence. They believed confessions obtained through torture. They believed authority without question. For 100 years later, we like to think we've evolved. We like to think we'd never fall for mass hysteria. We like to think we'd stand up against injustice. But would we? When everyone around you is afraid, when authority tells you to trust them, when questioning the narrative makes you a target, would you be Dietrich Flade? Or would you stay silent? Think about it. Next time on Ash and Crown History, we're covering another person who refused to stay silent. A scientist who looked through a telescope and saw something that contradicted church doctrine. And when the Inquisition came for him, he fought back. The trial of Galileo, when science went to war with faith and changed the world forever. Thanks for watching. This is Ash and Crown History, where the past is never boring. See you in the next one.